All right, today we're going to dive into one of biology's biggest secrets, and that is regulation. I mean, this is the master control system that takes a simple genetic blueprint and turns it into, well, all the incredible complexity of life. So, yeah, let's get right into it. Okay, so let's kick things off with a puzzle that honestly feels like a paradox. Think about this. Your eye cells, your bone cells, your skin cells, every single one of them has the exact same instruction manual, the same DNA. So how on earth do they end up so radically different? I mean, seriously, why don't you have teeth growing on your kneecaps? It's a legitimate question when you think about it. Well, the answer, in just one word, is regulation. You can think of it like life's master control panel. This is the process that decides which parts of that DNA instruction manual actually get read, in which cells and at what time. And that is the secret sauce for creating all this incredible variety from just one single set of rules. All right, so let's tackle the first big piece of this puzzle. How does one blueprint, a single genome, create the hundreds of different cell types that make you, well, you? Now, to really wrap our heads around this, we're going to start small, like really small, and then we'll work our way up. Our first stop, the most fundamental level of control there is, a simple on-off switch for a single gene. So, what is gene regulation? Well, it's really all about controlling access to the genetic code. It's basically the mechanism that flips genes on when they're needed and then shuts them off when they're not. This gives the cell this incredibly precise control over which proteins it's going to make and when. And you know what? There is no better example of this than something called the lac operon, which you find in bacteria like E. coli. This elegant little genetic circuit has one job and one job only: to decide whether or not it should burn precious energy making enzymes to digest lactose, the sugar in milk. And why is this so clever? Because it makes sure the bacterium only makes what it needs when it needs it. It's a total masterclass in evolutionary efficiency. And what's just so amazing about this whole thing is how simple it is. See, by default, the switch is in the off position. There is this little protein called a repressor that literally just sits on the DNA, physically blocking the gene so it can't be read. But when lactose shows up on the scene, it acts like a key. It grabs onto that repressor, changes its shape, and makes it pop right off the DNA. And just like that, boom, the gene is switched on. The cell starts making the exact tools it needs to digest the sugar that just activated it. It is a perfect self-regulating little system. Okay, so that's what's happening with a single gene in a tiny bacterium. Now let's scale up a bit. How does this exact same core principle, these on-off signals, work to coordinate something much, much larger, like an entire plant? Because it turns out this isn't just some neat trick for bacteria. Nope, it's pretty much the foundation for all multicellular life. So here's a question you might have even wondered about in your own backyard. You know how if you snip the very top off a growing plant, it doesn't just stop? Instead, it actually gets bushier. It starts growing out to the sides. So why does removing something actually cause more growth? It seems kind of backward, right? Well, this is a perfect example of regulation, but this time at the hormonal level. Okay, so in a plant you haven't pruned, that very top bud is producing a hormone called auxin. And you can basically think of auxin as a constant stop signal that's flowing down the stem, telling all the side branches, nope, don't grow. This whole thing is called apical dominance. The top bud is the boss, it calls all the shots. But the second you prune that top bud, you've removed the source of that stop signal, and all of a sudden the side buds are like, hey, we're free to grow, and they just take off. You've essentially just hacked the plant's own regulatory system to change its shape. All right, now let's take our final big step up in scale. We're going from plants to the incredibly complex systems inside animals. And here, regulation is about way more than just growth. It's about this constant dynamic act of keeping a stable internal environment, even when the world outside is, completely chaotic. The key idea we need to talk about here is homeostasis. Think of it as your body's internal cruise control. It's the grand total of all these regulatory processes working tirelessly behind the scenes to keep things like your body temperature, your blood sugar, your pH level, all of it within this incredibly narrow range that's needed to keep you alive. And the main tool your body uses to pull this off is something called the negative feedback loop. I know, the name sounds kind of technical, but the concept is actually beautifully simple. When something in your body gets too high, a process kicks in to bring it back down. And if it gets too low, another process brings it back up. And believe me, we all experience this every single day, especially with our body temperature. So let's just walk through it real quick. Let's say you start working out, right? And your body starts to heat up. That's the stimulus. There's a sensor deep in your brain, the hypothalamus, that detects this change. It's basically your body's thermostat. And immediately it sends out a response. Signals zip out to your millions of sweat glands telling them to get to work. And the effect? Well, that sweat evaporates from your skin and it pulls heat away with it, cooling you down. Your temperature returns right back to its normal set point. You see? The initial change, that rising heat, triggered a response that canceled it out. That's a negative feedback loop in action. So, as we start to pull all these different threads together, a really clear and powerful principle starts to emerge. From the tiny, microscopic world of a single gene, all the way up to the vast complexity of our own bodies, life is, at its core, this exquisite act of regulation. I mean, we've seen it now at every single scale. For bacteria, it's about those simple on-off switches for immediate survival. For plants, those same kinds of switches are used to control hormones that literally sculpt the entire organism. And for us, it's this constant symphony of feedback loops, all working to maintain that delicate internal balance that really separates life from non-life. And it all starts from the same basic idea. So, if there's one key takeaway here, it's this. From that single bacterium deciding when to digest a bit of sugar, all the way up to the massive network of systems keeping you alive right this very second, life is just a constant, incredibly intricate act of regulation. It's the one process that creates order, function, and stability out of the raw, chaotic materials of chemistry. And this, of course, brings us to a final, really crucial question. These regulatory systems, they're the absolute foundation of our health and function. They're what allow life to thrive, often against some pretty incredible odds. So, what happens when these finely tuned controls fail? Well, as you can probably imagine, the consequences are profound.